"You're just a burden now, Mom," my children shouted as they dragged me to a nursing home. But when they opened my will, their world shattered forever. Voices of Auntie Mae, my dear young ones, listen closely, because today I'm going to tell you a story that still burns in my chest like fire, a story that will shake you awake and remind you who you really are before life hardens your heart. I was 78 years old when my own flesh and blood looked me in the eyes and said the words no mother should ever hear. "You're just a burden now, Mom." They packed my little suitcase, drove me to that cold building that smelled of bleach and forgotten dreams, and left me there with a kiss on the cheek that tasted like good. Bye forever. But what they didn't know, what nobody knew, was that the woman they called a burden had already written the final chapter of their story. And when that will was read, oh child, when that will was read, the room filled with screams that still echo in my soul. Today I speak not from anger, but from the throne of victory they never saw coming. Because I rose from the ashes they tried to bury me in, and I want you to rise too. Before you become the child who breaks a mother's heart or the parent who forgets the sacred blood in your veins. I remember the day they decided I was finished like it was yesterday. The house I had scrubbed with these very hands for 50 years suddenly felt too big for me alone. My legs weren't as strong. My memory played little tricks sometimes, and instead of patience they chose resentment. My son, the one I carried 9 months and nursed through fevers, stood in my kitchen, the same kitchen where I baked his birthday cakes, and said, "Mom, we can't keep doing this. You're costing us too much time, too much money, too much life." Too much life. Can you imagine, young ones? The woman who gave him life was now accused of stealing his. My daughter, my little princess who once clung to my skirt, nodded along with tears that dried faster than they fell. They spoke of nursing homes like they were speaking of vacation resorts, showing me glossy brochures with smiling old people who didn't look anything like the broken soul I saw in the mirror that night. I didn't fight them. I didn't scream. I simply looked at them with eyes that had seen too much and said, "If that's what you need, my loves, then take me." But inside my chest something ancient woke up, an unbreakable fire that whispered, "They will learn," and oh, how they learned. Because the greatest revenge is not destruction, it is revelation. It is becoming so powerful in silence that when the truth finally speaks, the whole world trembles. I want you to feel that fire right now. Because one day someone will try to make you feel small. Your boss, your partner, your own child. And you must already know the taste of rising when they think you're buried. They chose the cheapest home they could find, of course, a place where the hallways were gray and the laughter had died years ago. The nurse who took my bag looked at me with pity, and I smiled at her because pity was the last thing I needed in my room, barely bigger than a closet. I sat by the window and watched the seasons change outside while something inside me began to grow again. Hope. No, child, something stronger than hope, certainty. You see, for years I had been quietly building an empire they never noticed. While they were busy with their big jobs and fancy cars, I was investing every penny from my late husband's insurance, every dollar from the little crafts I sold at the market, every birthday check they sent out of guilt. I studied the stock market on a tiny tablet they bought me so I wouldn't be bored. I learned about real estate, about trusts, about foundations that could change lives. And most importantly, I learned about people, how quickly they forget the hands that fed them when those hands grow wrinkled. So I wrote my will, not once, not twice, but every single month for 5 years. And every time they visited less, every time they forgot my birthday, every time they sighed when I asked for help carrying groceries, I added another line, another clause, another miracle waiting in the dark. Never tell them your plans, my loves. Let them sleep peacefully on grave they're digging for you, because the day you climb out is the day their nightmare begins, and your legend is born. The day I left this earth was quiet. No dramatic hospital bed, no long illness, just a peaceful slipping away in my sleep, the way warriors deserve to go. My lawyer called my children the very next morning. They arrived at his office in their expensive coats, already discussing how they would split the house, already planning the vacation they would take with Mom's money. My son had the nerve to wipe away a tear that never fell. My daughter clutched her designer purse like it was armor. The lawyer, a kind man who had become my friend over coffee and secrets, cleared his throat and began reading. Page after page after page, their faces changed with Every sentence, first confusion, then disbelief, then pure terror, because the house wasn't theirs, the savings weren't theirs, the investments that had grown into millions weren't theirs. Everything, every cent, every brick, every dream I had built in silence was redirected to a foundation I created in my name, a foundation that would pay college tuition for children whose parents abandoned them in nursing homes, scholarships for single mothers who were told they were burdens, homes for elders who had nowhere else to go, and at the very end, one final paragraph addressed directly to my children, to my beloved son and daughter, who taught me the true meaning of loneliness. I leave you the greatest gift of all, the opportunity to rebuild your souls. May you live long enough to feel what it is to be forgotten, and may mercy find you when you beg for it the way I once begged for your love. They screamed, they cried, they threatened lawsuits that went nowhere, and somewhere beyond this veil I smiled. But this story isn't about revenge, my young warriors, it's about preparation. It's about understanding that the world will try to shrink you. The moment you stop being useful to someone else's dream, your parents will age, your beauty will fade, your strength will weaken, and in that moment, people will decide what you're worth. So you must decide first. You must build in silence. You must grow roots so deep that when they try to uproot you, they rip their own hands instead. I was never just a mother. I was never just a widow. I was never just old. I was a queen wearing the disguise of weakness, and when the time came, I removed the mask and blinded them with my light. That is your assignment today. Become unstoppable. While they are still laughing, study when they party, save when they spend, learn when they scroll, because one day the tables will turn, and you want to be the one writing the will, not the one crying over it. There's a moment I'll never forget, even in the next life. About a year before I passed, my granddaughter, my son's little girl, snuck away from her parents during a rare visit and crawled into my bed at the nursing home. She was only 8, with eyes that still believed in magic. She whispered, "Grandma, why do Mommy and Daddy leave you here? Don't they love you?" I held her close and told her the truth dressed as a fairy tale. Once upon a time, there was a mighty oak tree that gave shade to everyone. But when winter came and her leaves fell, the little saplings forgot she was the reason they grew tall at all. So the old oak dropped her acorns far away, where new forests would remember her name forever. My granddaughter didn't understand then, but years later, when the foundation paid for her college, because her parents had lost everything, she understood. She called me on what would have been my birthday, tears in her voice, and said, "Grandma, I'm going to make you proud." And that, my loves, was worth more than any inheritance, because legacy isn't what you leave in a bank account. Legacy is what you plant in a child's heart when the world teaches them to be cruel. Now I speak to parents watching this, and to the children who will one day be parents. Time is the only currency that never lies. You cannot fake the hours you didn't spend. You cannot buy back the birthdays you missed. You cannot unsay you're a burden, when those words have already built a wall between souls. I forgave my children the day I signed the final will, not because they deserved it, but because I refused to carry their poison into eternity. Forgiveness isn't for them, it's for you. It's the moment you stop letting their smallness define your greatness. But mercy doesn't mean stupidity. Mercy means you protect the innocent, even if the innocent is the version of yourself that still believed blood makes family. Family is not DNA. Family is the people who stay when staying is hard. Choose your family wisely and love them fiercely, because one day you will be old, or sick, or broke, or broken. And the only thing that will matter is who still sees the king or queen beneath the rags. So here I stand before you, not as a victim, not as a ghost, but as living proof that it's never too late to write a new ending. They put me in that home to die forgotten. Instead, I died remembered by thousands of children who never even met me. Children who walk across stages in caps and gowns because one old woman refused to let cruelty be the final word. That is the power sleeping inside you right now. That is the empire waiting for your command. Start today. Open the account they don't know about. Learn the skill they say is useless. Write the book they'll mock until it's a bestseller. Build the business in your bedroom at 2 a.m. while they sleep, because the day will come when someone you love looks at you and sees only what you can do for them. And on that day, I want you to smile the way I smiled knowing the joke is on them. I want you to rise like a phoenix they never believed had wings, and when they finally see your fire, may it warm them, or may it burn away everything that made them forget who you really are. My beautiful warriors, if you take nothing else from this old woman's story, take this. Never let them write your ending. The pen is in your hand right now. The ink is your choices, your sacrifices, your quiet yeses when the world screams no. I was dragged away as a burden and returned as a legend. You can do greater things than I ever did, because you heard my voice while there was still time. Love your people hard, but love yourself harder. Protect your future self the way you wish someone had protected you, and when life tries to bury you, plant yourself deep and grow through the concrete, because the best stories aren't about how they broke us. They're about how magnificently we rebloomed. Now go, build your empire in silence. Write your will with your life, not just paper. And when they finally open it, let the whole world hear them gasp.